But you can see every one of those arrows is a separate pad site. And so in each one of these pad sites is a tank battery that has to be emptied by a truck. How many times a day?
In the beginning, about once an hour.
So I know that we have another mayor in the room, but typically right around tax time, you get a phone call from your local media source to discuss the property values of the town and whether you're going to have to raise taxes to meet your budget and things like that. And so, like the next day after I took office as mayor of Dish, I get a phone call saying, how come you've lost so much property value? And of course, they know the information before they call you. So you haven't got the information there. So I started doing some research. Because we had actually been growing, and so I thought, why would we be losing value? But we have a lot of agricultural property, and agricultural property is taxable. In Texas at a lower rate, I'm assuming it is here as well. And so the minerals actually provided a lot of our tax base, because the minerals are taxed in Texas as real property. So they're taxed at the same value your house is. So at one time we got 60% of all our property tax revenues from the minerals. But the average well loses 50% production after 1 year. And then it'll never get above that again. They can be re-stimulated, whatever the case may be, but it will never get above that. So, in theory, the only way that you can maintain this level is to drill more and more and more and more and more every year. So, what happened a couple of years ago? The price of gas dropped from $13 a million cubic feet to $3 a million cubic feet, essentially overnight. So what does that do to the tax base? Now what happens when it gets down to that low, what do companies start doing? They don't drill anymore. They cut way back on drilling. So in Dish, we don't have a big budget, but we don't have big spending either. So we weren't in too bad shape. Some of the cities got themselves in a little bit of a pinch because they were spending up at this level, and then when they went down to this level, they were having budget shortfalls, having to raise taxes, having to figure out what other ways to come up with revenue. Couldn't pay for the new fire truck. So the mineral leases that I've been able to find in Texas in the Barnett Shale range from about $75 to $30,000 per acre. Now the $75, that would have been probably back in the late 80s. Because they started leasing land back in the late 80s when they were trying to develop this fracturing technology. And the $30,000 would have been a few years ago when the prices were so elevated, and that would have been down in the neighborhoods down in Fort Worth. And the percentage is from 12 to 30%. A lot of times, the companies will come to areas like this, and they'll find someone who's outspoken, someone who's a civic leader, and they'll say, I got a deal for you. You get all these people to sign up in here, I'll give you 2% of all of their royalties. That could be a lot of money. It could be a lot of money. The reason that I say that is if there's somebody who's particularly interested in you signing over your minerals, there's probably a reason why. So obviously your royalty checks could vary dramatically. In Dish, we've got 60% royalties. And so this is an illustration of one of the citizens. They have 25%. Now we have a split estate. I don't believe you have that here currently. Widespread, you probably will eventually. But the split estate means one person on the surface, one person on the minerals. Well, you may get 50% of your minerals, you may get 25% of your minerals, or you may get none of your minerals. So this person has 25%. So if he had 100% of his minerals, it would equivalent to what, 3.5 acres or something like that. And he gets $150 to $200 a month. So depending on how much land you have, you could probably do the math there. As the illustration showed, in Texas, the drilling is getting closer and closer to residential homes. And they're not just doing this out in the country, they're doing it in the urban areas as well. The city of Fort Worth has 1,600 wells either drilled or permitted to be drilled within its corporate limits. And as I stated, many in Texas are subject to the split state. Mineral owner rights are dominant in Texas. That paradigm is shifting a little bit because there's been some litigation about surface owner rights coming back, and it's starting to shift a little bit. In Dish, most of the folks who have large parcels of property and made any money from the minerals have since moved away. I think this stuff needs to be set back. It don't need to be 200 feet from the house. We need to set these wells back. In Dish, we have a drilling ordinance, and that drilling ordinance requires a 1,000-foot setback. That was the most that we felt we could legally get away with. That was kind of, at the time, that was pretty common. It was 1,000 foot. Several cities had backed that up to 600 feet. If you look at 1,000 feet, go out here to one of these rigs and walk off 1,000 feet, you're still pretty darn close. There's technology available that could prevent a lot of the problems with our air emissions that we've seen in Dish. This is technology that the industry is aware of. As a matter of fact, most of the companies who are probably saying that we can't afford to do that here in Pennsylvania have presentations on the internet to where they said how great it is in other states. Because some states mandate this. You can have a gathering line in place. You can have a closed loop system where you don't have the drilling pits. You guys know what the drilling pits are? They put the drilling waste, frac fluids, things like that, go off in these two pits. But what happens if you're near a floodplain? What happens if you get a big snow? What happens if you get a lot of rain? What happens if those pits overflow and run down into your creeks? Anybody see any dead fish around here? So they can do it without having the pit. They can do a closed loop system and have no pits. They can have their gathering line in place. If they have the gathering line in place prior to drilling, guess what? They don't have to flare. Anybody ever seen flaring? The flames shoot way up in the air. Do I have any mineral owners in here? It's okay. It's okay, you can admit it. Great. Well, that flaring is your minerals. You ain't getting paid for that. And if it's so important that we have to do this, and we have to do this right now, why are we flaring off all of that gas? There's 7,000 wells in the Martin Shale. I don't know how many's in the Marcellus. How much gas would that have saved if we would have flared it, if we would have had a closed loop system, if we would have had a line in place, if we had any flaring? The gathering line is a line that goes from the well to a transmission line. So it'll be a small line, usually about 4 inches, something like that. If they have a massive well site, the gathering line will be bigger. So if they have a bunch of different wells, it might be a little bit bigger. But it simply takes the gas from the well to the transmission, and it'll get put into some interstate line and go on to different states.